Hello, little fifth graders. We're moving on in social studies to post-World War I America. And that just simply means after World War I, after the war had ended and that time period after that. Many Americans were shocked by the horrors of World War I. They decided to change their way of life in the 1920s. Most wanted to live for the present and enjoy life before something bad happened again. Americans had more leisure time to do what they enjoyed. So the 1920s was a time when Americans wanted to quit thinking about war and just really wanted to have a good time while there was peace around the world. Louis Armstrong. That's right, Louis. The Jazz Age. The Jazz Age was a time in American history when people were encouraged to have fun. Americans enjoyed dance halls, radios, fun music, sports, and new inventions. This was also known as the Roaring Twenties. Who was Louis Armstrong? Louis Armstrong was an African American musician who played jazz music in New Orleans. He played the trumpet and cornet, and he was also a singer. He rose from poverty to become a legend in jazz. Jazz music developed among African Americans in the South and quickly became popular all over the United States. Do you see that big smile on his face? He is smiling because he is making that money doing something he loves, playing music. I have this link in Google Classroom so you can hear one of his songs. Langston Hughes, the Harlem Renaissance. Many African Americans moved into cities in the 1920s, especially into New York. African Americans made the Harlem section of New York their home. The Harlem Renaissance was an era or a time period when African American artists and writers expressed their talents. Who was Langston Hughes? Langston Hughes was an African American writer during the 1920s. He wrote books, poetry, and drama combining African and American culture. Langston Hughes was one of the leaders of the Harlem Renaissance. He wanted to help people understand the life of African Americans in the big cities during the 1920s. Babe Ruth. Baseball. Organized sports became more popular. Baseball was the most popular sport in the 1920s. Americans loved baseball and baseball players became national heroes. People followed every move of Babe Ruth, the greatest baseball player in the 1920s. Who was Babe Ruth? Babe Ruth was a famous baseball player of the 1920s. He played for the New York Yankees for 15 seasons and set many hitting records. During his career in baseball, the New York Yankees went to the World Series 4 times. They won all 4 times. Babe Ruth is right there. And I have this link in Google Classroom for you to watch as well. Henry Ford, economic boom. After World War I, there was a boom in the American economy. That means it just got better. America had become the richest country in the world. Factories stopped making war supplies and were now producing goods like radios and cars. The automobile. The automobile was known as the horseless carriage. In the 1890s, only the rich could afford automobiles. During the Jazz Age, people were finally able to afford the newest way to travel. Traffic jam in the 1920s. Henry Ford used the assembly line to produce many automobiles. This method decreased the price of automobiles. He wanted automobiles to become more affordable. The fact that people could afford automobiles now brought about improved transportation. His first car was called the Model T. The Model T. Henry Ford did not invent the automobile, but his assembly line innovations made it possible to sell cars cheaply. When Ford installed his assembly line, each worker on the line became a specialist. One worker bolted on one wheel on each car as it moved along the line. Then that's just one example. He worked faster than if he had to move around the car bolting on all the wheels. Of course, it wasn't just wheels, it was the entire car that was built on an assembly line. Here's an example of an assembly line here. Each person has a job to do, and by the time you get to the end of the line, the entire part is built. Many Model T cars built. Happy Henry Ford because he's making money. Results. This increased productivity and meant that Ford produced its cars at a lower cost and could sell them at a lower price. As a result, more people could buy cars. Ford's mass production of the automobile resulted in more jobs, greater mobility, and the growth of transportation-related industries. So, 4 results because of the affordable automobile. Starting from the top, people could move quicker and easier. Jobs were created. Growth of transportation-related industries such as oil, steel, and roads. And lastly, people did not have to live close to their jobs anymore. All of these are results of more people being able to buy an automobile. Charles Lindbergh. Who was Charles Lindbergh? Charles Lindbergh became the first man to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. He traveled from New York to Paris in a single-engine airplane named Spirit of St. Louis. His flight created interest in airplanes, air travel, and more people started to get interested in air travel and airplanes. Sorry you couldn't see the end of that. It's in your notes, though. And there's his plane, Spirit of St. Louis. There's a picture of him next to his plane. You can see the whole plane in this picture. Not a very large plane, but as you can see, it's a lot different from the Wright brothers' plane. And that is the route he took to fly across the Atlantic Ocean. And the results of his plan, you can't see it in this, but in your notes, of course, it'll say people got interested in air travel, and air travel was well established all across the United States and the world. Last but not least, ooh, have a nice day.